This week, I'm painting up the Horus Heresy era Imperial Fist Captain Fafnir Rann. I'm Angela, you're watching Hobby Night, now let's get to it. That's right, I'm painting a Son of Dorn because I absolutely love all of the Sons of Dorn, and I've painted a Black Templar, I've painted Crimson Fists because they were my original army, but I've never actually painted any Imperial Fists. And I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to try it out because we've got a fancy named character, Fafnir Rann, and I think he is so handsome. I absolutely love his face. And I normally don't say that about Space Marine models. Normally I like to give them their helmeted versions, but I love his beard, his mustache, everything about this model. So we're going to be painting him up, but we need to get him primed first. So let's talk about that process because I'm going to be doing a two-part priming process here to sort of help give me better shadows. The first thing I'm going to do is prime him using a darker gray or mid-tone gray. Anything will work for you, but I use standard Mechanicus gray. After that, we're going to do a heavy priming with gray Seer, just making sure that that darker gray that we put down first remains in the recesses, and this lighter color tone will help us bring out our contrast paints as we continue to work on Fafnir. All right, let's go ahead and get started on the dreaded yellow Imperial Fist armor because I think I have a little bit of a secret weapon to make this a bit easier. And that secret weapon may not be so secret. It's a Iyanden yellow contrast paint. And if you didn't see this coming, well, you don't know this channel very well, and hello, welcome if you're new. Now, we are going to be treating this paint a little bit differently than I normally do because I'm going to be using 3 parts contrast medium to 1 part paint because I want to thin this down and layer it up gradually. The reason I want to do this is because sometimes a Iyanden yellow can dry with a bit of a really heavy orange undertone, and I want to avoid that this time. So we're going to gradually build this color up, 3 or 4 layers depending on how I'm feeling, depending on what part of the armor it is, and we're going to apply this pretty much everywhere on both the shield and Fafnir himself. Once the yellow is done and it's had plenty of time to dry, we're going to move on to some black trim. Now originally, I actually thought there was going to be a lot more just straight black trim on this guy, but it turns out Imperial Fists actually have a lot more metallic on them than I realized. So we're going to use this black on a few key locations for some details that will actually remain this color, but the rest of it will be covered up using metallics later on. Alright, so I just started on working on the metallics, but before I go further, I want to talk a little bit about the yellow and black on this model because I was a little worried when I started on him because the yellow, working on that first, has its concerns of it's very pale and the black could stain it really easily. But so far, the contrast paints have just been really smooth, they've been going on great, and I love the consistency I've gotten out of the yellow. One of the benefits of it actually being as pale as it is I can put the black directly over top of it. So most of these metallics that are going over top of that, it doesn't even matter what color it ends up becoming. I just want it to be a little bit darker. So I was actually able to just get some really great coverage and not have to be super clean or even through any of the process so far. Let's get back to those metallics and get this boy armed and ready. The main metallic color tone that we'll be using today is Leadbelcher's because I wanted something that was a sort of neutral dark steel color tone to complement the yellow on his armor. This takes quite a while because there is a lot of great detail on his armor, and this color makes them pop beautifully, especially in contrast to the pale armor we've already painted on. I absolutely love the way that this is turning out because it really starts to make Fafnir look like a true Imperial Fist. But there is a little bit of other metallics that we need to use today, specifically Retrobuiter Gold. Now I'm going to be using this specifically on some details on the shield, as well as some of the fists on his axe. Because of course, his power axe needs to have a little bit of bling on it, and we want these Imperial Fists to stand out proudly. Once we're done with that, we're going to move on to a couple of washes to really sort of round this armor out. The first one is going to be a yellow Citadel wash, which I can never pronounce the name correctly of because I always want to call it Casandora yellow, but that is not what it's actually called.
Casandora!
Yes, that is the yellow. So we're going to use that on all of the yellow paint we've already painted to just smooth everything out and make it so that it settles into those recesses and gives us a nice shadow. After that, we're going to lightly and delicately apply some Nuln oil to everything we painted metallic. Now on the axe head and his banner on the back, it's not so big of a deal, but when it comes to those details on his armor, I want to go very slowly because Nuln oil is very fluid. It can easily spill off into the yellow and make it look a little too dingy, and I want to avoid that as much as possible. So this does take almost as much time as applying that metallic paint in the first place. It's that time of the video where I interrupt to tell you about my Patreon and to let you know that we just added a Discord server which all tiers get access to. So if you're wanting a way to chat with me, share with me your projects, or just tell me what board games you're playing, definitely make sure to check the link below and check out my Patreon.
That new Horus Heresy painting tutorial is supposed to go live in like 12 hours. Where is she with that footage? Let's go get it. I swear, since she got the blessing of the 4 Chaos Gods, particularly Slaanesh, she has just become a complete diva. Now, Angela, where is that footage?
Listen, okay? The week may have gotten a little bit away from me. I had some moving stuff to take care of that I completely forgot about. Your birthday was this week, and we did have to celebrate that. We cannot miss that. I also launched a brand new social media page, which is absolutely booming, and it's been delightful. But don't worry, I am, in fact, working on Fafnir, and we're going to work on the details next. So what I have to take care of is the red on the leather, which is just going to be a little bit of Blood Angel's red. Then I'm going to take care of his head, which is going to consist of Tawny flesh for his base flesh tone, followed by a Reikland Fleshshade wash. For his hair, I'm going to keep it super simple. We're going with Gyrph-hound orange. And then we need to take care of the rest of his armor. And for that, I need a bit of holy white on those emblems on his shoulder pads. And finally, a bit of aethermatic blue for a couple of gems on his shield. Fafnir himself is done and he's looking fantastic, but he needs something to stand on. And so we're going to keep this pretty simple when it comes to his base. First, I'm going to pull out Armageddon dust because I kind of wanted to make it so that if he ended up on the table against my Death Guard, he would match and they would look like they were on the same planet together. So Armageddon dust it is. After it has had plenty of time to dry, I'm going to come back in with a Seraphim Sepia wash because I want something a little bit lighter. That Agrax just sometimes gets a bit too dark in my opinion, especially over top Armageddon dust. So Seraphim Sepia is what I end up going with. Once that is dry, I do go back in with a final dry brush using Tyrant Skull because I just really like the way this looks, and my textures on this particular base are fantastic. The dry brush makes them stand out even better. After that, it's just a matter of looking at the final model. I hope that Dorn is pleased with how I have painted Fafnir. I really liked painting this particular Space Marine. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of painting Space Marines because I find them a little bit dull. And I don't know if it's just because he's a named character and he had an excess of detail, but it was so much fun. And I'm really hoping that painting the rest of the Horus Heresy line is going to be as delightful as this was. Now, I don't think, like I said, I'm going to actually be using Imperial Fist as my main army when I pick up the box set, but that's why I wanted to paint Fafnir today. I really just wanted to explore actually trying yellow armor, and I think the Iyanden yellow really worked to my advantage. It still ended up maybe a smidge orange in some places, but I actually think that works for the Imperial Fists. And it just adds a little bit of depth to their armor, adds a little bit of grime in there too. And honestly, kind of a rust feel almost. Anyways, I feel like I'm justifying, but I'm not, because I just really like the way they turned out. And I definitely want to paint more of his like in the future, just not for my main army. Now, before I head out, I do want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we would not be doing this, so thank you very much. I also want to encourage you to go check out today's Wrestle Talk podcast, where I'm talking with Luke about, I believe we're going to end up talking about the fact that Stephanie McMahon has stepped down, and oh my gosh, Naomi and Sasha have walked out. It's been a crazy week in wrestling, so if you're into that kind of thing, make sure to check out the podcast. Anyways, I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night.